Hey guys, so we're just going to go over the review for our test over composition and inverses of functions tomorrow, okay? So the first question, it says use the following functions for 1 through 3. It tells us that f of x, so the function f with input x, is equal to 6 times x minus 5. And then g of x is equal to 2 minus 3 times x, okay? And the very first question is compose f and g. So in other words, it's f of g of x. So the idea is that you take the g function and you plug that into the f function. So here's my f function, 6x minus 5. So now instead of plugging in x, I'm going to plug in the g function, 2 minus 3x. So I'm going to say 6, because I'm doing the f function. Now instead of x, I'm going to plug in the g function, 2 minus 3x. And then minus 5, because that's the rest of the f function. All right, now I'm going to simplify. So I'm going to multiply the 6 in. So I'm going to get 12 minus 18x minus 5. And then I'm just going to put like terms together. 12 minus 5 is 7, so I'm going to get negative 18x minus 7. And that's number 1 right there. That's it. Okay. All right, number 2 simply says find f of g of 4. Okay, so I can do that by simply saying, okay, f of g of 4. I take the f function and I plug the g function in for it. But instead of the g function having x, like it did on number 1, I wanted to input the number 4 in for x. So the f function, which is 6 times, so now instead of having x, I'm going to put in the g function, 2 minus 3 times, but instead of putting in x, I'm going to put in the number 4, and then minus 5. And now I'm just simply calculate this. 3 times 4 is 12. 2 minus 12 is negative 10. 6 times negative 10 is negative 60. Negative 60 minus 5 is negative 65. And that's number 2, negative 65. Okay? Number 3, g composed of f of x. That just means basically we're doing the opposite way. On number 1, I put g into f. In this case, g composed of f of x is really just g of f of x. So it's just this guy right here. Okay? So it's just take the idea, just take the f function and plug it into g. So here's the f function, 6x minus 5. I'm going to take this 6x minus 5 and I'm going to plug it in for x in the g function. So it's going to be 2 minus 3 times 6x minus 5. Okay, now I'm going to multiply the negative 3 in. So I'm going to get 2 minus 18x plus 15. Put like terms together. So I'm going to get negative 18x plus 17. And there you go. That's all she wrote for it. All right. Okay. Number 4. Number 4, if I can get my thing, well, I guess I don't need to scroll. It just simply says, let f of x equal x cubed minus 5 and g of x equal x plus 3. If h of x is equal to x cubed minus 2, identify how it was composed. So this question is just asking you, are you composing f of g? So are you doing this, f of g of x? Or are you doing this, g of f of x? All right. So one of these ways should give us h of x, and they just want to know which way. Okay. So let's start off doing f of g of x. Okay. So f of g of x just simply means take the g function and plug it in for x in the f function right there. So it would look something like this: x cubed minus 2 raised to the 3rd power minus 5. Okay, so when you look at this, you say, okay, is that going to give me this? Can I somehow take this to get x cubed minus 2? Well, think about it. What is x cubed minus 2 cubed? Well, that's x cubed minus 2 times x cubed minus 2 times x cubed minus 2 3 times. Do you really think that's going to somehow land me here? No, it's not, because you're going to have x cubed minus 2, x cubed minus 2, x cubed minus 2. You're going to have an x cubed times an x cubed times an x cubed. That's going to give you like x to the 9th when it's all said and done. All right, so I'm not going to have, that's not going to work, okay? So let's try going the other direction. Let's try, instead of doing g into f, Okay, so it seems that this did not work. F of g of x. For number 4, that seems to have not worked. Okay, so let's try g of f of x. Okay, so let's give this one a shot. All right, so we're going to take the f function and plug it in for x on the g function. So we're going to have x cubed minus 5 plus 3. Okay, and we look to see if there's any like terms. Oh yeah, the negative 5 and the 3, they can go together. So we get x cubed minus 2, which is exactly what I wanted. So this is how h of x was composed. This is how it's composed, this right here, okay? I took the f function, I plugged it into g, and after simplifying, I got h of x. So this is my answer. Okay, let's go down to number 5. Find the inverse of each relation. Okay, this one's pretty simple. Number 5 is, because all you're doing on inverses ever is switching x and y. That's it. That's all you're ever doing is just switching x and y. So this would be 7, negative 5. Okay, negative 8, negative 6. I'm going to run out of space. That's okay. I can keep writing. Negative 2, comma 1. And 3, 10. You'll just notice on all of these, all I did was switch the x and the y. And that's it. That's all you need to do for number 5. Okay. Number 6, f of x is equal to 2x plus 5 divided by 3. Okay. So be aware that f of x is really just a fancy y. Okay. So now we're just going to switch y and x. So we're going to get x is equal to 2y plus 5 all divided by 3. So now what I have to do is simply do the last thing first. So I got to get rid of it, okay? So I got to get rid of the divide by 3 first because I'm solving for y. So I multiply both sides by 3. So, all right, so now I have 3x. I have 3x is equal to 2y plus 5. Okay, so now you ask yourself, okay, so what do I need to do next to finish solving for y? Well, I need to get rid of the plus 5. So I need to subtract 5 on both sides. So that's minus 5 is equal to 2y. So then my last step to finish solving for y is to divide by 2. So then my answer is just 3x minus 5 divided by 2. That is my inverse. All right. Let's go on number 7. Switch x and y. We know this is really just a fancy y. So we can say x is equal to the square root of y minus 4. You'll notice that everything is underneath the square root sign. So the very first thing I have to do is get rid of the square root sign. So I square both sides. So now I have x squared is equal to y minus 4. So now I just have to finish solving for y. Okay. And to finish solving for y, I just got to get rid of the minus 4, so I need to add 4. So you get x squared plus 4 is equal to y. And that's your inverse. So instead of having y, you might write f raised to the negative 1 of x. Okay. Number 8. So we switch x and y because we're just finding the inverse every time. So we're just going to say x is equal to 15y minus 1. So I add 1, so I get x plus 1 is equal to 15y. I then divide both sides by 15. So I get x plus 1 all divided by 15 is equal to y. Perfect. That's it. I mean, so instead of saying y, you might say f raised to the negative 1 of x. And that's all there is to it. Okay. All right, let's scroll down, look at problem number 9. All right, problem number 9, evaluate. If f of 2 is equal to 7, find the inverse evaluated at 7. Okay, it's important to understand what this guy is telling you right here. So you notice that the input is 2 and I get an output of 7. So that means that really x is 2 and y is 7. Well, if I'm looking at the inverse function and I'm inputting 7, what do I have to know the output has to be? 2. Because it's the inverse, right? So you're just switching them. Because look here, what was the output on this part? 7, right? So if the output became the input, that would be 7. Then the input becomes the output, which would be 2. Same idea over here. If the input is 3 and the output is -1, then I know it's the original, guys, but the original is the inverse of the inverse, right? So on the inverse, you had an input of 3 and an output of -1. So then on an original, if you have an input of -1, you should simply have an output of 3. Okay? For h of t is equal to -60 plus 7, determine the inverse of 4. Determine the h inverse at 4. Evaluate at 4. So first I need to find the inverse, okay? So this is really just a fancy y, so I switch y and t, because t is really just my x. So I get t is equal to -6y plus 7. So I subtract 7, so I get t minus 7 is equal to -6y. And then I divide both sides by -6. So I get t minus 7 divided by -6. Well, that's equal to my inverse. So in this case, it'd be h of -1 of t. But now, instead of plugging in a t, I just want to plug in a 4, right? So, because that's what this problem's saying. So I'm going to say 4 minus 1 divided by -6. 4 minus 1 is 3. 3 divided by -6 is just -1/2. And there we go. All right. Number 12. Same question, just different situation. So first we start out by finding the inverse. So I'm going to switch x and y, and I'm going to square both sides. So I'm going to get x squared is equal to y minus 5. I did a big jump here. I made this y, then I switched it with the x, and then I squared both sides. Okay? And that became x, and this became y over here. I need to add 5, so I'd get x squared plus 5 is equal to y. So there's my inverse. And then I need to plug in a 3 into my inverse. So I'm going to get 3 squared plus 5 is equal to y. 3 squared is 9. 9 plus 5 is 14. So bam, 14. That's what I get. Alright. Guys, I hope this video was helpful. Please let me know areas that I could improve it. Alright. If at any point in time you have any questions, send me an email, send me a remind. Ask me in class, ask me after school, before school. Alright. Just make sure you're getting your stuff taken care of. Alright. Thanks.